Hey guys, tonight we're slipping back, way back, into the heart of ancient Rome. The air is thick with the scent of roasted chestnuts and dusty marble. You're strolling along a sun-baked forum, sandals scraping over uneven stones, when suddenly, a burst of laughter erupts ahead. You round the corner, curious, and you stop. There, in the middle of the bustling square, a Roman senator. Yes, a man in a perfectly folded toga with a face like a storm cloud, is locked in a heated argument with a parrot. A bright green parrot, perched on a carved wooden stand, bobbing its head and squawking perfectly in Latin. You tilt your head, wondering if you're hallucinating. But no. The senator jabs an accusatory finger at the bird, red-faced, while the parrot repeats his last phrase, word for word, sending the gathered crowd into another round of snickers. And you think, I guess parrots can learn to say, Carthage must be destroyed. You sure wouldn't survive a debate here, especially not against a bird. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, let me know in the comments, where are you watching from, and what time is it over there? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You linger a moment longer, watching the parrot puff up its feathers like a tiny feathered senator in training. Someone from the crowd offers the bird a fig, and it takes it, smugly victorious. The senator throws his hands in the air, muttering something about the decline of public discourse. You notice the parrot's owner, a wiry man with a crooked smile, slipping coins into a little pouch as the onlookers chuckle and toss him more. Turns out, this is a common scene in the forum these days. A traveling entertainer, a man who taught his parrot to mimic senators. And somehow the parrot's comebacks are better than the originals. The senator storms off, his robes flapping like sails in a storm, leaving behind a trail of murmured gossip. Some say he was arguing about the price of olive oil. Others insist it was over a new tax on imported marble. But the parrot only says Rome wasn't built in a day, over and over, in a voice so precise it sounds like a recording. You grin. That you didn't expect. It's not every day you see a parrot out-debate a man in a toga. The sun dips lower, casting long shadows across the stone columns. Someone offers you a small piece of honey-soaked pastry, still warm from the oven. You take a bite, sweet, a little sticky, and the sound of distant hammering fills the air as craftsmen repair a cracked pillar nearby. The man with the parrot winks at you and mutters, "Some senators should learn to listen before they speak." Then he whistles for the parrot, who flaps onto his shoulder, preening as if he owns the whole city. As you walk on, you think about the little things. How the world can change because of a parrot. How sometimes the smallest voices echo the loudest. And how, no matter the century, there's always someone who thinks they know better, until a bird proves them wrong. A cool breeze rustles the laurel trees overhead, and you adjust your pace, letting the moment sink in. The scent of spiced wine drifts from a nearby stall, mixing with the smell of roasted meat and old stone. Somewhere in the distance, you hear the clatter of dice and the low hum of a distant fountain. You wonder, was the senator truly upset about the parrot, or about being laughed at by the crowd, the historians? Well, they're still arguing about that, and as you stroll further into the maze of streets, the parrot's voice fades behind you. Rome wasn't built in a day. You keep walking, the sound of the parrot's voice melting into the warm, sticky air. The streets twist and wind around you, lined with crumbling statues, weathered shop fronts, and the occasional pile of amphorae waiting to be shipped off to who knows where. Your sandals scuff against the stones as you wander past a tavern, its door propped open by a sleepy-looking dog who barely lifts its head as you pass. The scent of sour wine and wood smoke spills into the street, making your stomach grumble. Though after the honey pastry, maybe you're just being greedy. Then, through a narrow alley, you hear it. The sound of someone groaning in that very particular way that says they've made some questionable life choices. You peek around the corner and find a man sitting slumped on a low step, his toga rumpled and stained with something dark. Maybe wine, maybe something less dignified. His friend, a rotund man with a bald head and an air of exasperation, is kneeling beside him, holding up a small clay cup that smells, oddly, of vinegar. The man on the step waves it away weakly, muttering something about his head feeling like it's been trampled by Hannibal's elephants. The friend sighs, muttering, "You should have tried the fried canary last night. That's the best cure. Everyone knows that." You blink. Fried canary? As in the tiny yellow birds that chirp sweetly at dawn. The friend nods solemnly, as if this is common knowledge. Fried canary, with a dash of vinegar and some ground myrrh. Works every time. He pauses, tilting his head, then adds, "Well, almost every time. Some say it gives you hiccups that last for days." You stifle a chuckle as the man on the step groans louder. He slumps forward, mumbling something about "never again," while the friend pats him on the back and encourages him to at least sip the vinegar tonic. It's supposed to balance the humors, whatever that means. A few curious onlookers glance their way, shaking their heads with the universal look of rookie mistake. A little boy nearby whispers to his sister that last week, a man tried to cure his hangover by sniffing a dead mole. It didn't work. And you think to yourself, the Romans really had a different approach to medicine, didn't they? Then again, who are you to judge? You once tried drinking a liter of coconut water after a night out, and that didn't exactly end well either. Some historians say the Romans' obsession with balancing humors, blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, was their way of making sense of things they didn't fully understand. Others argue it was more about tradition than science. And as you watch the scene unfold, you start to wonder, was it the canary that helped? Or just the fact that they believed it would? The sun hangs heavy in the sky now, making the marble steps warm under your palms. You lean back, letting the buzz of the city wash over you. A man selling dates passes by, his cart creaking, and a woman in a blue tunic pauses to buy a handful, slipping a coin into his palm before disappearing down a side street. The groaning man finally accepts a sip of the vinegar, grimacing as it hits his tongue. He shudders, then sighs, muttering, "Maybe I'll try the canary next time." His friend just smiles, the kind of smile that says, "You probably will." And you, well, you're glad you don't have to make that choice tonight. You stretch, easing back into the quiet rhythm of the street. The wind stirs the olive branches overhead, and for a moment, you feel like you could stay here forever, watching people try to make sense of their aches and regrets in the most unexpected ways. You pass by a man selling small clay figurines, tiny gods and goddesses, each with their own quirks and promises. He offers you a Venus for love, a Mercury for quick wits, or a Hercules for strength. You smile politely, but keep walking. Your stomach growls again, and you think, maybe you should have tried the fried canary after all. Just once, for the story. You'll remember that for next time. You leave the hangover cure enthusiasts behind, wandering deeper into the city. The air hums with the soft clatter of tools, hammers tapping, chisels striking stone, as workers repair a crack in the steps of a crumbling temple. You pause for a moment, running your fingers across the rough surface of the marble. It's warm from the sun, almost like skin, and you can't help but think, this stuff's been here for centuries. And then you notice it, an odd mixture spread across the cracks. Not just crushed stone and dust. It's a strange, grainy substance that smells faintly like the sea. You look closer, and a nearby builder sees your puzzled expression. He chuckles, wiping sweat from his brow. "Volcanic ash," he says, tapping his bucket with a grin. "Best thing for making concrete last. Stronger than regular mortar. My grandfather used it, and his grandfather before him." You blink. Volcanic ash? That's not in the DIY aisle back home. The man laughs again, explaining that the Romans have this trick. Mixing volcanic ash with lime and seawater creates concrete that actually gets stronger over time, especially in salt water. That's why their harbors, their aqueducts, their temples, they last. Even today, centuries later, their concrete is still holding together while modern stuff crumbles. And you think, well, that's humbling. Your patio cracked after 3 winters. These people built entire harbors that could survive storms for millennia. Maybe you should have tried a bit of volcanic ash in your garden path. The man gestures toward a nearby wall, massive, pockmarked with age, but still standing strong. "See that?" he says. "That's been there since before I was born, since before my grandfather was born." He grins, a gap-toothed smile. "And it'll probably still be there after we're all dust." You keep walking, the sound of hammering fading behind you. The street narrows, the shade deepening as tall buildings lean inward like they're conspiring. A cat darts across your path, its tail flicking, and somewhere, someone is selling roasted chestnuts, their shells crackling in the heat. You pass a small shrine tucked between 2 houses. Faded frescoes of gods and goddesses, their faces worn away by time. A woman stops to leave an offering of figs, bowing her head as she murmurs a quiet prayer. You wonder if she knows the gods she's praying to, or if it's just tradition, like sprinkling volcanic ash into the mortar because your grandfather did. Some historians still argue about how the Romans discovered this concrete trick. Was it a happy accident, or did they study the effects of the ash carefully? Did they know they were building for eternity? Or were they just trying to keep the walls from falling down next week? The wind picks up a little, carrying the smell of fresh bread from a nearby bakery. You take a deep breath, feeling the heat of the day settle into your bones. The stones beneath your feet are warm, the sky above a pale, cloudless blue. You pause for a moment, tracing the outline of a carved inscription in the wall. A name, half erased by centuries of sun and rain. You wonder who they were. A builder, a senator, someone who never expected their name to outlast the sound of their own voice. You keep walking, and the wall stands, silent and strong, holding up the weight of time and stories. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you think about that volcanic ash. Maybe the Romans were onto something, or maybe they were just lucky. Either way, you're kind of impressed. And you're definitely not telling your local contractor about it. They'd probably just tell you it's not in the budget. You walk on, the heat of the stones seeping into your soles, and soon the air begins to change. It's heavier now, thicker, like something waiting to happen. A faint scent of sulfur drifts on the breeze, and you catch yourself wrinkling your nose. The ground under your feet feels oddly hollow, like you're standing over the belly of something alive and restless. You glance up, and there it is, looming in the distance. Half shrouded by haze, Mount Vesuvius. The mountain sits there, quiet and brooding, its peak softened by time, but you can't help but feel that it's watching you, like a sleeping dragon. Or an uncle at a family reunion who's way too quiet after a few glasses of wine. You shake off the thought and keep walking. The street opens into a sunlit square. Pompeii. It's so ordinary. Kids playing knucklebones, a man hawking fresh figs, a woman arguing with a baker over the price of flour. You hear the clatter of a blacksmith hammering away somewhere nearby, the rhythmic clang ringing through the air. Everything feels so alive, so normal. And that's the strangest part. Because you know what's coming. The eruption, the ash. the sudden terrifying end. But they don't. A man strolls by with a basket of fruit balanced on his head, whistling a tune that sounds oddly like something you might hear on the radio if it had existed. A group of women sit in the shade, chatting, their hands busy weaving garlands. A dog sprawls in the dust, twitching in a dream. Somewhere, a merchant shouts about a sale on garum. Yes, the fish sauce that smells like a sock left in the sun too long. And then, there's the baker's shop. You pause at the doorway, peering in. The air is warm and yeasty, filled with the smell of flour and smoke. Loaves of bread, round, dark-crusted, sit in neat rows, waiting for customers who will never arrive. Well, not today anyway. You reach out and touch the edge of the oven, feeling the roughness of the stone. It's still cool now, but you know, when the mountain wakes up, this place will be swallowed whole. Frozen in time, just like that. There's something both eerie and comforting about it. Like looking at a photograph where everyone's smiling, not knowing it's the last picture they'll ever take. And you think, how many lives were paused right here, mid-bite, mid-laugh, mid-argument over who stole the last fig? Some historians still argue about how much warning they had. Did the rumblings in the ground give them a chance to run? Were there signs in the sky? Or did they go about their business, oblivious until the ash fell like snow and the world went quiet? A child darts past you, chasing a wooden hoop, his sandals slapping against the stones. He laughs, and it's such a clear, bright sound, you almost forget the mountain. Almost. You step back into the sunlight, letting the heat wash over you. The street is busy, alive with voices and footsteps, the clatter of carts and the lowing of oxen. Life, in all its noisy, messy glory, unfolds around you. You breathe it in, the dust, the heat, the scent of olives and wine, and you wonder, if they'd known what was coming, would they have lived differently? Or would they have still argued over the price of bread and the latest gossip about the senator with the parrot? You keep walking, and the mountain looms behind you, silent for now. But you know, one day, it won't be. You wander down a narrow street, the walls of the buildings leaning so close, you feel like you could touch both sides at once. Your fingers brush the cool stone, tracing little grooves where the plaster has crumbled away. The scent of roasted meat drifts from an open doorway, making your stomach grumble despite the heat. And then you hear it. A low, rhythmic clank like metal on wood. You turn the corner, and there it is. A small training yard tucked behind a tavern, half hidden by a weathered archway. A gladiator stands there, shirtless, his skin glistening with sweat, practicing slow, deliberate swings of a gladius. His movements are careful, almost meditative, like someone folding laundry with a blade. Beside him, a boy, maybe 12, maybe younger, sits cross-legged, nibbling on a crust of bread and watching with wide eyes. You hear him ask softly, "What will you eat before the fight?" The gladiator doesn't pause his practice. He exhales sharply through his nose and mutters, "Lentil stew. Same as always. Keeps you strong. Doesn't make you sick." You blink. Lentil stew. That's not what you expected. Not some grand feast or exotic delicacy. Just lentils. The kind you find in every marketplace, humble and unassuming. It's almost funny, in a way. Like discovering a modern-day UFC fighter pre-games with oatmeal and a banana. The boy looks disappointed. Not dormice stuffed with honey? Or roasted peacock? The gladiator snorts, lowering his sword. Peacocks for senators who want to look fancy. Lentils are for men who want to win. He pauses, wiping sweat from his brow with a cloth that looks like it's seen better days. Besides, he adds, glancing at the boy with a half-smile, you don't want to get sick before you fight. Imagine throwing up on the sand in front of everyone. His grin widens, revealing a chipped tooth. They'd never let you live that down. You chuckle quietly, and the boy giggles too. A few other men sit nearby, oiling their shields or patching up sandals. The yard smells like sweat, leather, and dust, mixed with the faint, sweet scent of something roasting on a nearby brazier, probably the lentil stew. You think about how we romanticize gladiators, the glory, the crowds, the cheers. But here, it's just men. Men who train, who sweat, who worry about what they'll eat and whether their boots will hold together. Men who are scared, though they'd never admit it out loud. Some historians argue about what gladiators really ate. Was it lentils, barley gruel, or did they splurge on exotic meats when they could? There are ancient bones found in gladiator graves, traces of calcium-rich diets. Some say they even drank a weird ash tonic to strengthen their bones. Others think that's an exaggeration. But the lentils? The lentils feel real. You linger a moment longer, watching the gladiator as he picks up his sword again. The way his muscles flex, the way the blade moves through the air like an extension of his body. It's hypnotic. The boy claps his hands, grinning, and you wonder if he dreams of fighting in the arena someday too. You move on, the sound of the sword fading behind you, replaced by the hum of voices. The distant bark of a dog, the clatter of wheels over cobblestones. The air smells like oil and smoke now, and you feel a pang of hunger that you try to ignore. But in the back of your mind, you wonder, when the gladiator steps into the arena tomorrow, will he remember the lentils, or the boy's wide eyes, or the weight of the blade in his hand? You think, probably all of it. Because no matter the century, no matter the city, some things stick with you. You wander away from the gladiator's training yard, your mind still lingering on the idea of lentils and chipped teeth. The streets narrow again, the shadows longer now, and the scent of crushed herbs fills the air. Sweet basil, fennel, a hint of lavender crushed underfoot. And then you hear it. A soft, sing-song voice drifting from a vineyard just beyond the city walls. At first, you think it's someone humming a tune, but no. You get closer, peeking through a break in the hedges, and there they are, a small group of farmers tending to rows of grapevines, their hands moving slowly, almost tenderly, as if they're tucking children into bed. One man stands apart, stroking a vine's leaves and whispering under his breath. You tilt your head, listening. He's not muttering prayers. He's talking to the vine, like actually talking. "Come on, darling," he murmurs. "Soak up that sun. Don't be shy now. I know you've got a good harvest in you." You blink, unsure whether to feel charmed or a little unnerved. The man leans in closer, cooing as he pinches off a small, shriveled grape. "Can't have you wasting your energy on these, can we?" A woman nearby catches you watching and grins. "They say it helps," she whispers. "The vines, I mean. They like to hear kind words. Makes the wine sweeter." She winks like this is a secret only a few know. You chuckle softly. "Talking to plants? Sounds like something your aunt with the massive fern collection would do. But maybe they're onto something. After all, Roman wine was legendary. And the gods? Well, they always seemed a little too involved in everyday affairs. Maybe Bacchus himself was listening." The woman wipes her hands on her apron and says, "Some say the grapes can hear you. Others say it's just an old superstition. But you can't argue with a good harvest, can you?" Her smile is wide, sun-creased, and you find yourself smiling back. The wind rustles through the vines, a soft, whispering sound that makes you think of secrets. You imagine the grapes swelling with the warmth of the sun and the words of their caretakers, like they're soaking in both. Historians still debate whether the Romans really believed vines could hear them. Some think it was more of a poetic metaphor, like talking to the stars or writing letters you'll never send. Others argue there were practical reasons. Spending time in the vineyard helped them spot disease, pests, or other issues before they spread. Either way, it's a tradition that's lingered, whispered from one harvest to the next. You take a step closer, running your fingers over the rough bark of a vine. It feels sturdy, almost stubborn, like it's been here for centuries. The leaves are soft, a little dusty, their veins catching the sunlight like tiny green rivers. A man with a tanned face and a crooked hat nods at you and says, "It's not just the sun and rain, you know. The vines need stories too." You tilt your head, curious. He grins, lifting a cluster of grapes in his hand. Every good wine has a story inside it. Some years taste like war, others taste like love. This year tastes like waiting. You nod, not sure if you fully understand, but it feels true in a way you can't explain. You breathe in the air, rich with the scent of warm earth, ripe fruit, and distant laughter, and feel a strange kind of peace settle over you. You keep walking, the murmurs of the vineyard fading behind you. The sun dips lower, turning the sky a soft gold. A cicada starts its evening song, and somewhere nearby, a dog barks lazily, the sound bouncing off the stones. You think about the vines, the farmers, the whispered encouragements carried on the breeze. Maybe it's all superstition, or maybe there's magic in the words we speak, even to plants. Who knows? Maybe tomorrow you'll try whispering to your houseplants, see if your basil starts behaving. You leave the vineyard behind, your footsteps light, and the air now carries the faintest scent of roasted pine nuts drifting from a nearby stall. The sun is beginning its slow descent, the sky painted in streaks of gold and lavender. The breeze is cooler now, but the city's pulse never quite settles. There's always a market to haggle in, a deal to strike, a story to overhear. As you turn onto a busier street, you hear it. The rustle of fabric, the clink of brooches, and the unmistakable tut-tutting of a Roman senator who's trying to dress himself. You slow your pace, curiosity tugging at your sleeve. And there he is, half hidden behind a screen in an open courtyard, struggling mightily with the folds of his toga. A servant hovers nearby, trying to help, but it's clearly not going well. "Left over right. No, right over left," the senator grumbles, his voice rising in pitch. He yanks at a corner of fabric, and the whole thing droops awkwardly, pooling at his feet like a sulking dog. His sandals peek out from under the mess, looking more than a little defeated. You pause, watching the scene unfold like a slightly absurd play. The senator mutters something about his dignitas being at stake, as if an audience of togas is waiting to judge him on the correct angle of his drapery. Which, honestly, they probably are. The servant offers a timid suggestion. Perhaps a touch of purple, sir, to show your status." At this, the senator brightens, nodding vigorously. Ah, yes, the precious purple. The rarest dye, squeezed from thousands of tiny mollusks. More expensive than gold, more coveted than a seat at the emperor's table. You glance down at the senator's fingers, already stained faintly violet from the dye, and wonder how many sea snails it takes to produce just one toga's worth of status. The servant carefully drapes a strip of deep purple over the senator's shoulder, smoothing it into place. You swear the man stands a little taller, puffing up like a rooster. He gestures grandly to an imaginary crowd, proclaiming something about the glory of Rome, before tripping over the hem of his toga and catching himself on a nearby column. You press your lips together to keep from laughing, but a small snort escapes anyway. The servant freezes, wide-eyed, while the senator glares in your direction. You quickly turn your attention to a nearby vendor selling woven baskets, pretending you've been very interested in wicker craftsmanship all along. Some historians still debate just how much purple dye actually cost. Ancient texts talk about it being worth its weight in silver, sometimes gold. Others think that's an exaggeration, but what's certain is that purple meant power, and the more purple you wore, the more you had to prove. You watch the senator fuss with the folds a bit more, muttering about how he should have married a woman who could tie a proper knot. His servant murmurs something about an upcoming debate in the Senate, probably about taxes or war or fish sauce, though frankly, with this toga situation, you suspect the senator won't be winning any arguments today. As the man finally swishes off toward the forum, you catch a glimpse of a small stain near the hem of his toga. A faint smudge of, could it be, garum? The infamous Roman fish sauce. You grin. Well, there goes the dignity. The servant sighs and begins gathering up the leftover fabric scraps, muttering under his breath about the daily struggle for elegance. You feel for him, really. Draping yourself in 15 feet of fabric without a single stitch? That's ambitious. You move on, the air buzzing with the sounds of evening. Vendors shouting last-minute deals, a musician plucking a lyre, the faint splash of a fountain nearby. A woman passes by, balancing a clay jar on her head, and you catch a faint whiff of lavender oil. As you glance back one last time, the senator's purple-clad figure is already swallowed up by the crowd, a splash of expensive color in a sea of dusty tunics. And you think, maybe it's not the purple that makes the man. Maybe it's how well he can walk in it without falling flat on his face. You drift further into the city's tangled streets, the sky now a soft gradient of peach and violet. A cool breeze stirs the dust at your feet, and somewhere a bell chimes lazily, marking the hour. Not that anyone seems to care. The market stalls begin to close, the smell of warm bread and roasting chestnuts giving way to a subtler scent. Soap, olive oil, and something a little more pungent. You wrinkle your nose slightly and follow the smell. It leads you to a broad archway, beyond which lies a Roman therme, a public bathhouse. You step inside, and the air hits you like a warm, damp blanket. Steam curls from every corner, fogging the painted walls and making the marble floors slippery underfoot. It's busy in here. Naked bodies moving through clouds of vapor, voices bouncing off the stone. Deep, echoing conversations about politics, philosophy, and who's been cheating at dice games. The sound of water sloshing is everywhere. Men plunging into pools, servants splashing buckets over the heated stones, and the occasional, unmistakable plop of someone dropping a sponge into the communal bath. You glance around and can't help but think, this place is like a Roman version of a coffee shop. If everyone was half naked and aggressively sweaty. A man nearby sighs dramatically and announces to no one in particular, the Senate is in chaos, again. His companion nods solemnly, flicking water off his ear. Of course it is. Have you seen the price of garum lately? Scandalous. They both pause to lean against the edge of the pool, their chests heaving, looking like a pair of grumpy walruses. Another man walks by, humming under his breath, holding what you can only assume is a strigil, a curved metal scraper used for cleaning off sweat and oil. You watch as he expertly scrapes down his arm, little curls of grime flicking onto the floor. It's oddly satisfying, like peeling glue off your hand. A young man barely out of boyhood sits awkwardly on a bench nearby, clutching a small jar of perfumed oil. He glances around nervously before whispering to the man next to him. Do you think I should, apply it before the plunge or after? The older man snorts and says, before, if you don't want to smell like yesterday's stew. You catch a whiff of the jar as the boy opens it. Rose petals and maybe cinnamon? Not bad. The bathhouse isn't just about getting clean, you realize. It's where deals are made, gossip is exchanged, and reputations are scrubbed just as much as skin. it's also where hygiene gets creative. The communal sponges, for instance, shared among patrons, cleaned in a little bucket of vinegar, and then back into use. You shiver a little, trying not to think too hard about it. Historians still argue about how effective Roman baths really were. Did they improve public health, or just spread germs in warm, friendly waves? Some say the vinegar solution was surprisingly effective as a disinfectant. Others aren't so sure. What's clear is that the baths were as much about status and networking as they were about getting clean. And as you notice a small group huddled in the corner, whispering about a senator's latest scandal, you think, maybe not much has changed. You settle onto a smooth stone bench, feeling the warmth seep into your bones. The steam softens the edges of everything. Faces blur, voices melt into a low hum, and you feel your own breath slow. Someone nearby drops their strigil with a clang, and a few heads turn before going back to their quiet debates and muttered complaints about the new taxes. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the sound of dripping water and low voices lull you into a soft haze. The warmth of the baths, the scent of oils, the gentle shuffle of feet. It's like the city is exhaling, and as you drift, you think, maybe the bathhouse isn't just for the body. Maybe it's for the soul, too, even if you have to share a sponge. You step back out into the street, the heat of the bathhouse still clinging to your skin, the faint scent of rose oil lingering in your nose. The sky is slipping into a deeper shade of dusk now, streaked with violet and hints of gold. The city's sounds soften a little, quieter conversations. Footsteps slowing, the distant strum of a lyre drifting through an open window. You follow the music, winding through narrow alleyways until you find yourself in a small, open square. A modest wooden stage is set up in the center, lit by flickering oil lamps that cast long, wobbly shadows. A few dozen people sit on rough benches or low stone walls, waiting, whispering softly to each other. A street vendor weaves through the crowd, balancing a tray of honey cakes on his head, and you can't help but eye them greedily. One day, you'll work up the nerve to snatch one before they're all gone. Then, the murmur of the crowd hushes, and the play begins. It's a tragedy tonight, one of those heavy, heart-wrenching stories where you know someone's going to die, probably while making a long, poetic speech about fate. The actors wear masks, large, exaggerated faces painted with wide eyes and open mouths, and their voices carry in that oddly nasal, theatrical way that makes you wonder if anyone actually talked like that in real life. The hero on stage raises his arms dramatically, declaring something about honor and sacrifice, while the chorus sways and chants in the background. You catch yourself tilting your head, trying to make sense of the plot. It's about a man who angers the gods by stealing a sacred goat, which leads to a series of increasingly terrible events involving a broken amphora, a cursed olive tree, and a misunderstanding about someone's laundry. You can't help but smirk. Stealing a goat? That's how this whole mess started? You've had days like that, though yours usually involve emails, not divine wrath. A woman in the row ahead of you wipes her eyes with the corner of her shawl, sniffling softly. Beside her, a man yawns so wide you can see every one of his teeth. You wonder if he's here for the story, or just for the chance to sit quietly under the stars. The sky above is dark now, dotted with faint stars. A breeze stirs the air, carrying the scent of roasting chestnuts and a hint of wood smoke. It feels peaceful in a strange, haunting way. You glance toward the edge of the square and spot an old man sitting apart from the crowd, his back straight, his gaze sharp. He's watching the play, yes, but he's also watching the people. You wonder what stories he could tell, what other tragedies he's seen unfold beneath these same stars. Some historians still argue about how much of these plays was for entertainment and how much was a mirror? A reflection of Rome itself, with all its glory and mess, its ambitions and mistakes. A dog ambles past, tail wagging lazily, before settling near a group of children giggling in the dust. The hero on stage collapses, arms flung wide, as the chorus erupts into wails of grief. Someone behind you lets out a quiet, a little too practiced, as if they've seen this play a dozen times before. You sit back, letting the sounds wash over you. The rise and fall of voices, the soft murmur of the audience, the faint crackle of the oil lamps. And as the play drifts toward its inevitable, tragic end, you think, maybe that's the point. That no matter how grand or small the story, we all end up watching it together, breathing the same air, feeling the same weight in our chests. You glance up. The stars seem a little brighter now, like they've been waiting for you to notice them. The play continues, and the city hums around you, alive, restless, eternal. The play drifts to a close, the final cries of the chorus fading into the night air, like the last wisps of incense in a quiet temple. You linger a moment, feeling the crowd around you stir, people rising slowly, stretching, murmuring softly about the performance. Some say the lead actor wasn't as good as last year's. Others argue about whether the ending should have been rewritten. You overhear someone whisper that the playwright is cursed, and you think, of course, someone's always cursed around here. You step back into the streets, where the night feels cooler now, the stones beneath your feet holding on to the day's heat like a fading memory. The city hums on, more softly perhaps, but still alive. And then you hear it, a faint, rhythmic thwack sound, sharp and deliberate, like someone working in the dark. Curious, you follow the sound through a winding alley and into a small square tucked behind a row of faded buildings. There, beneath the flickering glow of a single oil lamp, you find a man sitting cross-legged on the ground, surrounded by tools and scraps of cloth. He's busy, pulling teeth. You blink. Wait, what? It's not a scene you'd expect to stumble upon at this hour, but there it is, a small crowd gathered, murmuring softly, watching as the man leans over a seated figure who's gripping the arms of his chair so tightly his knuckles have gone white. The tooth puller, a man with a thick beard and a steady hand, works with practiced ease, holding a pair of iron tongs in one hand and a small soot-blackened oil lamp in the other. He mutters something about the tooth worm, the cause of all pain, they say, squirming inside the tooth like a tiny demon. The crowd nods, some crossing themselves, others whispering blessings. The tooth puller gestures to a small bowl beside him, where he's laid out an assortment of remedies. Powdered herbs, a pinch of ground myrrh, and a small jar labeled crushed mouse brains. You blink again. Mouse brains? Oh, yes. The Romans believed that a smear of crushed mouse brains could help ease a toothache. Some thought it soothed the nerves. Others believed it scared off the tooth worm. And you, well, you're just wondering if anyone ever tried it on a dare. The man in the chair lets out a muffled groan, and the tooth puller gives the tongs a sharp twist. There's a pop, a small, grim sound, and the tooth comes free. The man slumps forward, gasping, and the crowd lets out a soft, approving murmur, like they've just witnessed a particularly impressive magic trick. The tooth puller holds the bloody tooth aloft like a prize, grinning widely. He waves it in the air and declares, "No more pain for this man." The crowd applauds politely, though one woman mutters that her cousin tried mouse brains once, and it only made things worse. Someone else argues that rinsing with warm wine is the real cure, while a third person swears by a mixture of honey and garlic. Historians still argue about whether Roman dental practices were advanced for their time or just a touch chaotic. They had surprisingly sophisticated tools, yes, but also some questionable ideas, like the belief that toothworms cause decay. You think about your own last visit to the dentist and wince. At least they didn't offer you a jar of mouse brains. The man with the newly pulled tooth stumbles to his feet, clutching a small cloth to his mouth, and someone presses a cup of watered-down wine into his hands. He gulps it down gratefully, though you're pretty sure it's doing more for his nerves than for any lingering pain. You linger a moment longer, watching as the tooth puller cleans his tools and starts preparing for the next customer. A young woman steps forward, pointing nervously at a molar, and the cycle continues. Pain, hope, and just a little bit of superstition swirling together under the dim light. You turn to leave, your footsteps soft on the stone. The crowd thins behind you, the sounds fading into the night. The streets stretch ahead, quiet now except for the occasional whisper of wind and the distant clatter of a cartwheel somewhere beyond. And you think, maybe it wasn't the mouse brains that helped. Maybe it was just the comfort of knowing someone was there, ready to help you face the pain. Or maybe, just maybe, it was the mouse brains. Who knows? The Romans believed in a lot of strange things. You pat your own teeth absent-mindedly, grateful they're behaving, for now. The night has settled deeper now, the air cooler, the stars sharpening into tiny, patient fires overhead. You drift down a quieter street, the distant hum of the baths and the theater fading into the background. The smell of roasted chestnuts still lingers faintly, but now it's joined by something else. A sharp, briny scent that tickles your nose and makes your stomach uncertain. You follow the scent, curiosity pulling you along like a string, until you stumble into a small, crowded square lit by flickering oil lamps. There in the center stands a stall, and it's not selling wine or bread or even honey cakes. No, this stall is dedicated entirely to garum, the infamous Roman fish sauce. You pause, nostrils flaring involuntarily. It's pungent, like a sock that's been left in a gym bag for 3 days, or maybe a particularly adventurous cheese that got lost in the back of the fridge. The vendor behind the stall beams proudly, waving a long-handled spoon over a large clay jar. The liquid inside glistens darkly, catching the lamplight like a pool of liquid bronze. "Best batch this side of the Aventine," he calls out, grinning wide enough to show teeth stained faintly by too much wine. Made from only the finest mackerel, packed with salt, and aged just right. It'll make your stew sing and your neighbors jealous. You blink. The thought of anyone being jealous of fish sauce seems optimistic. A woman leans in, sniffing cautiously, and mutters to her friend, "I heard the Emperor's chef orders from this stall." The friend raises an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. The vendor puffs up even more, announcing, "Garum is the lifeblood of Rome. You haven't truly eaten until you've tasted the sea in your soup." A man nearby, nose wrinkled, mutters that it smells like the Tiber on a bad day. His companion nudges him and says, "Ah, but it's the taste that matters. You'll never make a proper stew without it." They both nod solemnly, as if this is a universal truth. You step a little closer, peering into the jar. The surface shimmers slightly, and you think, this is the sauce that built an empire? It feels improbable. And yet, garum was a Roman obsession. It flavored everything from fish to lentils to roasted meats. Rich or poor, senator or servant, everyone used it. Though, to be fair, the quality of your garum might say a lot about how many coins you had to your name. Historians still argue about whether garum was an acquired taste or a universally beloved staple. Some ancient texts praise it as a delicacy, a liquid treasure. Others, well, they compare it to the smell of rotting fish guts in the sun. You decide you'll take their word for it. As you watch, A young boy runs up to the stall, clutching a small coin in his palm. He looks up at the vendor with wide eyes and whispers, "My mother sent me for the special batch, the one with the extra anchovy." The vendor's grin stretches even wider, and he ladles a small amount into a tiny clay jar, wrapping it carefully in cloth as if it's the most precious thing in the world. You turn to leave, your nose still twitching from the scent, and think, some things never change. People will always have their secret ingredients, their family recipes, their flavors that remind them of home. Even if, in this case, home smells like a fish market on a hot afternoon. A breeze stirs the air, carrying a faint melody from a distant lyre player. You let it wash over you, mingling with the scent of garum and oil lamps, and think, maybe tonight, you'll pass on the fish sauce, just this once. You step away from the garum stall with a faint twitch in your nose and a new appreciation for culinary restraint. The breeze is cooler now, brushing your skin like silk drawn over stone. Rome at night has a strange sort of hush to it. Not silence, but something more thoughtful. Like the city is catching its breath between centuries. You find yourself wandering down a narrow side street. The walls here are closer, the shadows deeper, and the stones beneath your feet worn smooth by generations of sandaled footsteps. A few oil lamps flicker in wall niches, their golden light dancing across old graffiti. Yes, graffiti. Not spray-painted slogans or doodled smiley faces, but words and pictures scratched into the plaster, etched by hands long vanished. You run your fingers along one faint carving, a heart, barely the size of your thumb, with two names scrawled above it in looping Latin script. It says, Claudia amet Marcus. Claudia loves Marcus. You pause. It's such a small thing, so simple. No date, no flourish, just a quiet, stubborn little truth etched into a wall. And suddenly, you feel it. Not just the stone, but the moment behind it. The girl with ink-stained fingers, sneaking back to press her message into plaster. The stolen hour. The wild hope that someone might read it. A few steps down, another carving. A stick figure riding what may be a very confident-looking donkey. Below it, Gaius est asinus. Gaius is a donkey. You snort softly. Apparently ancient teenagers were no more mature than modern ones. Further along, someone has chiseled a tiny poem about missing home. It's barely readable, but you make out a few lines. Something about fields, springtime, a fig tree. The letters are uneven, the spelling creative, but the longing, that's crystal clear. Some historians say graffiti was the true voice of the Roman people, not the polished oratory of the Senate or the marble inscriptions of emperors, but the raw, honest scribbles of everyday life. Others argue it's too fragmentary, too emotional, too chaotic. But as you read these scratched confessions and crude jokes, you feel like you're eavesdropping on ghosts. Kind ghosts, lonely ones, ones who made mistakes and told jokes and fell in love. You turn a corner and find a whole stretch of wall covered in graffiti. One reads, "I was here. I kissed Julia." Another, "Beware the cook. He steals figs." And then, in careful, deliberate strokes, "I saw the stars from this spot and thought of her." You smile. Even in an empire built on conquest and marble, someone still stopped long enough to write down a feeling. You lean against the wall, letting the cool plaster press against your back. Above you, the stars blink steadily, the same ones they saw. The same ones Claudia probably whispered to as she carved her name. A cat slinks by, brushing against your ankle before disappearing into a pile of broken amphorae. The city is so full of stories, it spills them out onto its walls. Some are funny, some are cruel, some are beautiful in their awkwardness. You take one last look at the carved heart. The lines worn smooth now, softened by weather and time. But it's still there, still whispering. And you think, maybe that's what we all want. To leave something behind that says, I was here. I felt something. You walk on, slowly, the echo of Claudia's message lingering like a heartbeat in the stone. You wander through the narrow streets, leaving behind the quiet whispers of stone and stepping into a growing hum of excitement. The air feels charged now, like a storm is coming. But no, it's not thunder you hear. It's the distant roar of a crowd. You follow the sound, weaving through alleys until you emerge into a wide, dusty expanse. The Circus Maximus. It's massive, staggeringly so. You stand at the edge, taking it all in. The rows upon rows of stone seats rising like waves, the wide oval track in the center glowing under torchlight, and the noise, oh the noise. A living, breathing ocean of cheers and shouts, the crack of whips, the clatter of hooves pounding against packed earth. You inch closer, and the smell hits you. Sweat, crushed grass, horse dung, roasted meat from vendors weaving through the stands. Someone near you is selling little clay cups of spiced wine, and you consider it for a second. But then a man behind you bellows, 2 sesterces on the blues, and nearly knocks the cup out of your hand. Ah, yes. The factions. Red, white, blue, green. Teams that inspire a loyalty fiercer than family, fiercer than reason, even. People would live and die by the color of a racing tunic. Fights broke out over it. Riots, sometimes. You glance around and realize you're surrounded by a sea of blue supporters. Scarves tied to arm, faces painted, chants echoing like battle cries. On the track, the chariots blur past, wheels spinning in a haze of dust. You see the drivers, young men mostly, gripping the reins so tight their knuckles gleam white in the torchlight. Their tunics billow behind them, their faces half hidden by dust and sweat and raw focus. The horses strain, their muscles rippling, eyes wild and wide, foam flecking their mouths. A chariot takes the curve too sharply, wobbles. There's a gasp from the crowd. And then a crash. Wood splinters. One of the drivers tumbles into the dirt, rolling, limbs flailing. The crowd roars, a sound that feels less like concern and more like appetite. You wince, but the man scrambles up, limping but grinning, waving to the stands like a gladiator saluting an emperor. He's fine. For now. A boy beside you, maybe 10 years old, is shouting himself hoarse. Faster! Faster! The blues can't lose. His father ruffles his hair, both of them grinning like they've just won a fortune. And maybe they have. Bets are flying everywhere. A man nearby clutches a small wax tablet so tightly, his hands are shaking, muttering numbers under his breath. Historians still argue about how much the races were entertainment, and how much they were a social safety valve. Did the roar of the crowd keep the peace? Or was it just another way for the powerful to distract the restless? You wonder about that as the chariots thunder past again, the crowd rising to its feet in a single, swaying motion. A vendor shoves a tray of honeyed nuts in your direction, and you buy a handful just to have something to do with your hands. They're warm, sticky, and absurdly good, like the kind of snack that's better than it has any right to be. As the race nears its end, the cheering crescendos, a living wave of sound that rises and crashes, rises and crashes. You feel it in your chest, in your bones, in the soles of your feet. The chariots round the last turn, one driver leaning forward, teeth bared in a snarl, his hair streaming behind him like a war banner. And then, it's over. The blues have won. The stands erupt, people hugging, shouting, throwing their arms in the air. Someone tosses a garland of flowers onto the track, and the horses, bless them, just keep trotting like none of this is for them. You breathe out slowly, feeling the adrenaline drain away, and you think, Maybe you could have been a charioteer in another life. Then again, given your luck, you'd probably be the guy who fell off at the first turn. The crowd starts to thin, the energy settling into a warm, humming afterglow. You walk away slowly, the dust still clinging to your skin, the sound of hooves and wheels still echoing faintly in your ears. And you think, Rome really knows how to throw a party. The energy of the chariot race lingers in your veins, a faint, pleasant hum, like the aftertaste of too much wine, but sweeter. The streets are quieter now, the crowd dispersing into small groups, their voices softening into background hums. You wander through the thinning throng, the air warm against your skin, the smell of trampled grass and spiced nuts still hanging faintly in the air. You take a turn down a side street, expecting quiet, maybe the sound of a distant lyre. But instead, there's a ripple of excitement. People are gathering along the edges of the road, craning their necks, whispering with that particular buzz that means something unexpected is about to happen. And then you see it. A giraffe. Yes, a giraffe. Tall, elegant, swaying gently as it moves, its spotted coat gleaming like polished amber under the oil lamps. It blinks lazily, curling its long tongue around a branch of fig leaves offered by a man who looks both terrified and ecstatic. Children squeal, pointing. Women gasp, clutching at their necklaces. A few men chuckle, though they step back quickly when the animal turns its massive head and snorts. You blink a few times, wondering if you're dreaming. But no, this is real. The emperor himself, they say, had it brought from the far reaches of Africa, a gift from a distant king. Some say it's a sign of Rome's power, that even the creatures of distant lands bow before her. Others say it's just, well, a very fancy pet. The handlers walk carefully beside it, ropes looped around its neck like they're afraid it might float away. Worse, break into a run and trample someone's senator uncle. A boy nearby whispers, "It's taller than the gods." Another whispers back, "I heard it drinks wine from golden bowls." You can't help but smile. The stories are already growing, stretching taller with every telling. The giraffe pauses in front of a vendor selling dates, sniffing at the baskets with a curious tilt of its head. The vendor looks both horrified and honored, like he's not sure whether to offer the fruit or just bow in reverence. The animal blinks slowly and moves on, leaving behind a trail of whispers and wide eyes. Some historians still debate whether this was the first giraffe ever seen in Rome, or if there had been others, long forgotten in the folds of time. Records are vague, and sometimes they read more like dreams than facts. Did it really drink wine from golden bowls? Did it sleep on embroidered cushions? Or was it just an animal, bewildered by the strange new world it had stumbled into? You glance up at the creature's swaying head and wonder what it thinks of all this, if it understands the awe it inspires, or if it's just looking for more fig leaves. It turns its head slightly, and for a fleeting moment, you lock eyes. There's something ancient there. Calm, slow-moving wisdom, or maybe just the vague sense of a creature who's seen too much, eaten too little, and just wants a nap. The giraffe moves on, its steps slow and oddly graceful, a living poem weaving through the streets. The people follow, murmuring, some laughing, some simply staring. A few whisper prayers as if unsure whether to marvel or fear. You linger at the edge of the street, watching the scene drift away into the darkness. The sound of the crowd softens into a hush, leaving behind only the faint echo of hooves, the occasional giggle of a child, and the scent of crushed fig leaves in the air, and you think, Rome has a way of surprising you. Even when you think you've seen it all, a giraffe turns the corner. The giraffe disappears into the night, its long, swaying silhouette swallowed by the lamplight. You stand for a moment, watching the last flickers of its passing before turning back into the quieter streets. The air feels softer now, cooler, touched with a hint of smoke and lavender oil drifting from a nearby doorway. You pause in front of a small house, its shutters half open, and catch a glimpse of a woman seated by the window. She's holding a small bronze mirror, tilting it back and forth in the lamplight, squinting as she dabs at her face with a mixture of... is that crushed beetles? And yes, crocodile dung. You blink. Yep, definitely crocodile dung. The air has a sharp, musty tang, and she applies it with a kind of focused determination, patting the paste into her skin like a modern influencer with a skincare routine from the underworld. A young girl peeks in, giggling, and asks, "Mama, will it make you look younger?" The woman doesn't even glance up. If it's good enough for Cleopatra, it's good enough for me. She dabs a bit more under her eyes, then leans in close to the mirror, inspecting the results like a general surveying a battlefield. You step back a little, not wanting to interrupt this moment of beauty innovation, or possibly beauty survival. The girl runs off, humming a little tune, and you wonder how much truth there is to these ancient potions. Historians still debate the ingredients of Roman cosmetics. Some say crushed beetles were used for that bright, almost glowing red hue. Carmine, they called it. Others argue the dung was for skincare. An exfoliant, maybe, or just a very creative way to keep the flies away. And then there's the lead. Yes, lead. Used to whiten the skin, give it that prized pallor of the elite. Of course, they didn't know it was slowly poisoning them. Or maybe they did, and they just really, really liked the look. A small, tattered scroll leans against the mirror, a list of ingredients scribbled in a shaky hand. Myrrh, honey, powdered pearls, saffron, rose petals, a pinch of ash. You tilt your head and think, this is part alchemy, part wishful thinking. And if you're honest, it's not that different from that time you tried a DIY face mask that smelled like wet cardboard and left your skin feeling like sandpaper. The woman finishes, sits back, and gives herself a slow, satisfied nod. She's glowing in her own way. Whether from the beetles or the confidence, you're not sure. A neighbor leans over the loaves, offering a little jar of something, perhaps another secret recipe. They trade a few words about wrinkles and sunspots, and you hear a soft laugh. The neighbor mentions something about a blessed olive oil infused with crushed rose petals and goat's milk. You make a mental note. Romans really loved mixing things together, sometimes brilliant, sometimes bizarre. The night air is warm on your face, and as you step away you feel a little grateful, honestly. Grateful for the strange things people do to feel beautiful, for the stories they tell each other, about love, about beauty, about beetles. And as you drift onward, the scent of the oils lingers, soft and powdery in the dark. You think, whether it's beetle paste or a modern serum, some things never change. We all just want to glow, even if we have to smear a little crocodile dung on our faces to do it. You keep walking, the night folding in around you like a soft wool cloak. The moon hangs low, casting a pale shimmer on the cobblestones. And somewhere, a lyre plays a tune so slow and lilting, it almost sounds like a lullaby. The scent of warm bread drifts through the air, mixing with something else. You pause, nose twitching. There's a faint whiff of roasted meat, honey, and something small and furry. You follow the scent, curiosity tugging at your sleeve once again, until you find yourself peering through the open window of a dimly lit room. Inside, a handful of Romans recline on low couches, draped in loose tunics, their laughter soft and a little sleepy. A man, clearly the host, gestures grandly at the centerpiece of the meal, a large, polished platter heaped with what look like tiny golden-brown rodents, stuffed dormice. You blink. Once, twice. Yep, definitely dormice. Each one carefully roasted, its little paws curled in a final tragic embrace, the bodies plump and glistening with honey glaze. They're arranged neatly, like a dish fit for an emperor, and the guests murmur their approval, reaching delicately for the prized morsels. A woman giggles as she pops one into her mouth, chewing slowly, eyes half closed in bliss. Another guest, a young man with a laurel wreath slipping sideways on his head, declares, "The trick is in the stuffing. Peppercorns and pine nuts, just a hint of garum. Perfection." You feel your stomach do a little somersault, and yet there's something kind of charming about it, in a weird, I guess I'd try it once way. Some historians argue that stuffed dormice were a rare delicacy, served only at the fanciest banquets, meant to impress, to show off wealth and connections. Others think it might have been more common than we realize, just another dish on the endless Roman menu of, let's see what happens if we cook this. You watch as the host gestures to a small boy carrying a tray of little clay pots, each filled with a dipping sauce, honey, spiced wine reduction, a tangy blend of vinegar and herbs. The boy moves carefully, the pots clinking softly, and you can't help but smile at his determined little frown, as if the entire success of the evening rests on his ability not to spill a single drop. The conversation flows in a lazy, meandering way. Someone mentions a senator's scandal, another talks about the price of Egyptian linen, and yet another debates whether garlic makes the best cure for a cold or if it's really just a trick by the garlic sellers. A small, fluffy dog snoozes under the table, its paws twitching in a dream. You lean against the wall, breathing in the warmth of the room, the mix of roasted dormice and honey, and soft, bubbling conversation. The scene feels so ordinary in its own peculiar way. Just people eating together, sharing stories, licking honey from their fingers, and trying, sometimes desperately, to forget the weight of the empire for a few hours. A woman glances toward the window and spots you. She smiles, eyes crinkling, and gestures to the platter as if to say, "Want one?" You shake your head, grinning, and move on, though you do find yourself wondering, what would dormouse taste like anyway? You leave the warmth of the dining room behind, stepping back into the cool hush of the street. The night feels thicker now, the kind of quiet that wraps around you like a heavy blanket, muffling the distant sounds of laughter and the soft clop of hooves in the distance. You follow the curve of a narrow lane, drawn by the faint flicker of lamplight spilling from a villa's open courtyard. The scent of roasted herbs and warm wine drifts in the air, mingling with the faintest trace of... Wait, is that roses? You ease closer, peeking into the gathering. A low table gleams with the remains of a feast, bowls of olives glistening with oil. Platters of grilled fish, half-empty cups of wine, and in the center, a shattered alabaster bottle, its contents seeping into the mosaic floor in a dark, shimmering pool. The air feels charged, tense. A man stands rigidly by the table, his tunic disheveled, face flushed. Not entirely from wine, you suspect. A woman in a crimson stola leans against a column, her expression cool, too calm. While another guest, clearly a little too deep into the evening's drinks, waves his hands dramatically and says, I told you not to place it so close to the edge." The host, a portly man with a trimmed beard and a face caught somewhere between fury and resignation, rubs his temples. "It was Egyptian rose oil," he mutters, voice low but sharp. "The best. Imported." The woman in the red stola raises an eyebrow, tilts her head slightly and says, "Well, perhaps the gods weren't impressed by such extravagance." Her voice is light, but the air crackles like a storm is building in the room. You stand just outside the pool of lamplight, watching the scene unfold like a play. One that's both absurdly small and yet somehow deeply important. Some historians say Roman banquets weren't just about food. They were stages for subtle power plays. Who sat where? Who got served first? Who spilled the oil? All little signals in the endless dance of status and influence. Others argue that accidents were just accidents, and the stories grew later, embroidered into legend by the gossiping tongues of dinner guests. You watch as a servant hastily mops up the spill with a rag, trying to look invisible. The man who spilled the bottle protests. "It wasn't me. The table wobbled." While the host sighs and mutters something about the omens being unfavorable tonight. The woman in red takes a slow sip of wine, her eyes half-lidded, and says softly, "Perhaps the oil wasn't meant to stay with us." Her tone is light, but there's a sharp edge to it, a quiet, cutting grace that makes the others fall silent for a breath too long. You catch a few muttered words. Her family's debts, someone says. Her husband's ambitions, another whispers. And just like that, you realize, this isn't just about a bottle of perfume. It's about alliances, reputation, a dance as old as Rome itself. The spilled oil glistens on the floor, catching the lamplight like a tiny sea, shimmering and fragile. The scent of roses is thick in the air now, heady, sweet, almost dizzying. It clings to your skin the way moments cling to memory. You step back, leaving the villa behind, the murmurs and sideways glances fading into the quiet hum of the city. The scent follows you for a few paces, lingering like a secret. And you think, sometimes, it's the smallest things that ripple the deepest. You walk on, the scent of roses slowly fading into the cooler night air. The streets are quieter here, the hum of the city softening into distant murmurs, and the occasional creak of a cartwheel. The stars glow a little brighter above, winking between the rooftops, and you feel the weight of the day settling on your shoulders like a warm, familiar shawl. And then, you hear it. Low voices, heated, sharp, clipped like broken glass. You pause, half hidden in the shadow of a column, as two figures emerge from a courtyard up ahead. A man in a dark tunic, his hair silvering at the temples, gestures furiously, his voice tight with the effort of control. A younger man, barely more than a boy really, stands rigid, arms crossed, chin lifted in defiance. The argument is old. You can feel it in the air, thick as the dust under your feet. It smells like stale bread and bruised pride. Words like inheritance, land, family honor slip between clenched teeth, weaving into the night like smoke. The older man hisses, "Your grandfather would never have..." And the boy snaps back, "My grandfather is dead, and it's my vineyard now." You flinch a little, as if the sharpness of the words might nick your own skin. A woman leans out of an upper window, arms folded tightly, watching with narrowed eyes. A younger child peers around her skirt, wide-eyed, clutching a worn wooden doll. The doll is missing an arm. The boy's voice cracks slightly, the bravado slipping for just a second. "He said it would be mine. He promised." The older man cuts him off with a snarl, gesturing wildly toward the street, as if throwing the boy's hopes out into the night. "Promises are wind. The land is mine, as it was mine before you were even born." A few passers-by slow their steps, glancing sideways, pretending not to listen, but definitely listening. You catch snatches of whispered commentary. The feud's still going on, then. And poor boy, he'll never win. Some historians argue about these family feuds, whether they were the result of inheritance laws or simple human stubbornness wrapped in legal scrolls. Others think they were just stories. Old grudges given new breath each generation, like an heirloom no one really wanted, but no one could bear to throw away. The boy turns on his heel, storming off into the dark. The older man stands still for a long moment, shoulders rising and falling, then mutters something low under his breath. Something you can't quite catch, but it has the sharp edges of regret. The woman at the window sighs softly, like a leaf curling in on itself, and closes the shutters with a quiet click. You step back into the night, the weight of the family's sorrow trailing behind you like a thread in the dark. The street feels heavier somehow, as if the walls themselves remember the argument, the sharp sting of betrayal, the ache of promises broken like old clay. You think about your own family for a moment, how even now, in a world far removed from Roman streets, there are words you'd like to take back, silences you wish you could fill. A dog barks in the distance, sharp and sudden, and you keep walking. The scent of olives drifts past, carried on a faint breeze, mingling with the faintest trace of, was that cinnamon? And you think, some things never change. Not in Rome, not anywhere. You walk on, the family's feud fading behind you, swallowed beneath the city's endless labyrinth of walls and whispers. The moon has climbed higher now, its silver light pooling over the rooftops like soft milk, quieting even the sounds of footsteps on stone. And then, you stop. Something about the air here feels different, heavy, still, like the world is holding its breath. Before you stands a bakery, or what was a bakery. Its walls are half buried in a strange dark crust, ash and time fused together. The doorway yawns open, a jagged mouth rimmed with soot, and you step closer, peering inside. The shelves are still there, the counter, the clay oven, cracked but standing, its mouth gaping like it's waiting for a fresh batch of loaves. And then you see them. Round loaves of bread, fossilized, dark as coal, sealed into place by the eruption that swallowed this street whole. You stare, not quite believing. The loaves are frozen, perfectly round, scored with the baker's hand, like they're waiting for a customer who never came. You take a slow step inside, the dust muffling your footfalls. There's a faint scent in the air. Charcoal, stone, and something sweet, like the ghost of flour hanging in the dark. Some historians argue about this bakery. Was it in Pompeii? Herculaneum? The debate twists through dusty papers and careful studies, tracing the lives of bakers long gone. One theory suggests the loaves were rising when the ash fell, sealing them mid-bake like a cruel joke of the gods. Others think the bakery had just opened for the morning rush, the bread stacked and ready. You reach out, tracing the shape of one of the loaves with your fingers. Careful, reverent. It's warm under your fingertips, or maybe that's just your imagination. A small sign is etched above the doorframe. Panis quadratus. Baker's bread. Simple. Every day. The kind of thing you'd eat without thinking, tearing off a hunk to dip into oil, wiping the last drops of sauce from your plate. But here, frozen in time, it feels like a prayer. A moment of life, paused in the middle of an ordinary day. A rat skeleton lies curled in the corner, tiny bones fragile as eggshells. Nearby, a small jar has toppled, its lid broken, spilling a few blackened olives across the floor. A child's sandal lies under the counter, the leather shrunken but unmistakable. You stand there, breathing in the quiet, and you think maybe this is what the past is. Not grand battles or sweeping laws, but quiet places where life lingered for just a breath too long before the world changed. You step back into the street, the bakery's shadow stretching long behind you. The air feels cooler now, the moon higher, the night deeper. The loaves stay where they are, waiting for hands that will never return. You leave the bakery behind, the image of those loaves still lingering in your mind like a fading dream. The streets grow quieter now, the soft hush of the city wrapping around you like a blanket. You wander aimlessly, letting the night guide your steps, and find yourself in a small, empty square. The moonlight spills across the stones in silver ribbons. The walls glow faintly, their edges softened by centuries of wind and whispers. A fig tree leans over a crumbling fountain, its branches swaying gently, almost as if it's sighing in its sleep. You pause, letting the stillness settle into your bones. The city feels different now. Not just ancient, but tender. Tired, maybe. The way a place feels after too many stories have been told, too many footsteps have worn the stones smooth, too many hearts have broken and mended, and broken again. You hear a soft sound, barely there. A breath of wind, a snatch of a lullaby drifting from a window somewhere. The faintest clink of pottery being set down gently on a table. Life, still moving, even here. You find a spot to sit, your back against a cool stone wall, and tilt your head back to watch the stars. They shimmer softly, patient and distant, the same stars that have watched over Rome for centuries. The same stars that watched the Parrot win its debate, that gleamed on the gladiator's chipped tooth, that blinked over the bakery the moment the ash fell. You think about all the small lives woven into this place. Claudia and her graffiti heart, the family curse whispered on a quiet street, the spilled perfume pooling in the cracks, the farmer whispering to his grapevines, the boy clutching a jar of garum, the laughter, the tears, the dinners, the debates, the dormice stuffed with pine nuts, the senator tripping over his toga. And you wonder how many of them knew their stories would outlast them. Some historians still debate whether these small moments matter, whether history is made by emperors and generals, or by bakers and children, and the people who spill things at dinner parties. You sit quietly, letting the thought drift, letting the city hum softly around you. A breeze stirs the fig tree. A dog barks far away. Somewhere, someone sighs in their sleep. And you feel it, deep in your chest, the gentle, stubborn pulse of a world that just keeps going. You take a long breath in, letting the cool night fill your lungs, and close your eyes. The stars blur into a soft glow behind your eyelids. The sounds fade. The stones are cool against your skin, grounding you. And you let yourself sink into the stillness, into the quiet heartbeat of the city, into the weight and the lightness of all the lives that came before. The night deepens. The air settles into a calm, steady hush, like the whole city is exhaling at last. You sit still, breathing slow, the weight of the world lighter now, the echoes of ancient laughter and whispered arguments fading into the soft hum of the night. The fig tree's leaves flutter gently overhead. The stars shimmer quietly in their endless dance. And you, well, you're part of it now. Just another heartbeat in a city that has held so many. The stories linger, soft and warm. Claudia's carved heart, the scent of rose oil pooling on marble, the taste of lentils and honey, the laughter of a child watching a giraffe saunter past. They blur together into something gentle, something timeless. Your eyelids feel heavy, the rhythm of the city slowing into your own. A soft breeze brushes your cheek, cool and faintly sweet, and you think, maybe you'll stay here a little longer. Maybe you'll dream with the stones. And so you let yourself drift. The stars blur, the sounds soften. The night holds you, cradling you in its ancient arms. Sleep comes easy now, like a slow tide washing over your thoughts. The past is quiet. The city sleeps. And you are safe here.